and this is a question that came in before the webinar, we were taking some email questions, is agent or broker liability. So if there's an agent who's, selling the property, representing, are they exposed to anything here? Let's say they sell it and something happens soon after the sale of the property. Is there exposure for those people?
Well, yeah, there is. So typically agents have liability policies as well to protect against those types of claims, but they do as well have potential liability if they're aware of a condition existing in a property that they're involved with the sale or the purchase. Maybe they're representing the purchasing owner. Then if there's something they're aware of that may impact the value of the property or impact the property in an adverse way, then they would also have a duty to disclose that information. And if they don't, there may be some liability. Yes.
So Brad, I was going to ask you this question because this came up recently where there was a broker sold a property and there was some issue with flooring or something, and they were sued. It was like a $3 million lawsuit. They were named personally in the lawsuit, even though they worked for, a brokerage. And they started getting nervous because they had no asset protection, and the spouse owned the business. And so, describe that scenario, because to me that was unreal and crazy.
Yeah, no, I don't know exactly how the employment arrangement works with realtors and brokers, but I would think that they were probably 1099s, independent contractors with the broker. And so if they're acting in their individual capacity, then like any other sole proprietor, they would have unlimited liability for the totality of what they're doing in that professional course and scope. Whereas if they had a individual corporation that they incorporated themselves and then they were 1099ing with the broker, with the corporation, then I think they would have some limited liability on what they're doing. But again, I don't know how brokers, whether it's Keller Williams, Prudential, 21st Century, I don't know exactly how they work, whether that's allowed in their arrangement. I don't know, but I would think that I could easily see how an agent would have personal exposure, and we've worked with a lot of them, not only at the broker level, all the way up to the financing level, because the personal exposure that's involved. But back to what Steve was saying about those latent defects versus those obvious defects, I think that Steve, how would a property inspection, do the property inspectors, are they just looking at electrical work and structures, or are they now trained to see, hey, I see a mold problem here too, and put that up on their report that everyone has to sign off on?
Yeah, they'll typically do a pretty thorough inspection of the property, and yeah, they just look and see what's visible. So if there is something like mold growth, then that will definitely show up on the report. And that may lead to, well, what was the cause of that mold? Is there some broken pipe possibly inside the wall, or some source of what's the source of the moisture? And then that, once you're on notice of that, then you most likely will have to do further investigation, explore, find out that there are further, more substantial problems that just weren't visible to the inspector.
Right. So once the buyer is on notice, does that relieve the then seller of liability? Because hey, it's on the report, you knew about it. You can't come up the chain of command here to try to come after me as the previous buyer. So their liability is, the previous seller. So that cuts off their liability. You agree with that?
Generally, yes. Once a buyer, so the whole part of the purchase sale transaction is that the seller disclose. Disclose.
Right. So back to Paul's question then.
Yeah.
So assuming you have disclosure, would that disclosure then also relieve the broker of liability?
Most likely, yes. It doesn't mean you're still not going to get sued.
Totally. Yeah.
In California, you can sue anyone for everything, and there's nothing that's going to prevent that. Generally, so long as there's been full disclosure and the buyer elects to proceed in light of that disclosure, they're taking it, as is, so to speak.
That's right. Caveat emptor. That's right. So, Paul, I think to answer the attendee's question, I think that yes, there would be broker liability, and I think that would be an unlimited liability so long as they're acting in that broker capacity as an individual. If they aren't already incorporated with their broker, again, I don't know so much, but there are ways to mitigate their liability based upon exposure of known or reasonably ascertained defects, such as what we just spoke about, the inspection. But I think that their liability could be minimized if it was latent and nobody knew about it, right? Because it's undiscovered. And if something pops up a handful of years later, then I don't see how that could tail back all the way to the broker if they themselves at the time of sale had no knowledge or appreciation of the risks upon sale.
Right, right.